healthy again is legit and might actually be happening. In a live stream event on Monday, RFK Jr. told supporters that Donald Trump has promised him control of several public health agencies if he wins a second term. Agencies that include the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Let's watch.
The key that I think that President Trump has promised me is control of the public health agencies, which are HHS and its sub-agencies, CDC, FDA, NIH, and a few others, and then also the USDA, which is key to making America healthy, because we've got to get off of seed oils and we've got to get off of pesticide-intensive agriculture.
During a rally at Madison Square Garden on Sunday, controversial for other reasons, Trump also said that he would let RFK Jr., quote, go wild on food and medicine. Let's watch.
Robert F. Kennedy cares more about human beings and health and the environment than anybody. And he's going to be absolutely, having him is such a great honor. I've been friends of his for a long time. And I'm going to let him go wild on health. I'm going to let him go wild on the food. I'm going to let him go wild on medicines. The only thing I don't think I'm going to let him even get near is the liquid gold that we have under our feet.
RFK Jr. has a long history of spreading vaccine misinformation. In 2022, he was banned by Meta for spreading misinformation. He also promoted false claims about vaccine links to autism and compared the vaccine mandate to Nazi Germany. So Amber, RFK Jr., could he be, I don't know, Minister for Health? How do you feel about that? I mean, isn't it disputable or dubious to have this guy in such a prominent role?
I am actually not sold that he is actually going to get a cabinet position, so to speak. I think that he might even have an external advisory role of some kind. This is according to sources I've talked to close to the Trump campaign. They're like, look, he's never going to get past the Senate confirmation process to be in charge of a cabinet. There is the potential drawback of having some of his conspiracies as opposed to his legitimate concerns about public health distracting from the moves of the administration. So it's sort of a I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing. Based on my understanding and the conversations that I've had with people close to the campaign, again, they're kind of like, look, he has a lot, that's great. We appreciate his skepticism of a lot of the bureaucracy related to health, his skepticism of the COVID vaccines, and certainly the over-processed foods and things of that nature. But we also recognize that he has a problematic history on non-COVID vaccines and his comments about those that we probably don't want directly associated with the admin.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the non-COVID vaccines is, in a way, is the bigger issue with Kennedy. The COVID thing, I mean, I don't personally like his general standpoint on that, and I don't really agree with it, but the COVID issue has certainly become a contentious one. Mm-hmm. The comments preceding that about other vaccines seem in a way just far less defensible and much more problematic to me. And to have someone like that be at least in the running for a pivotal role in a future Trump administration if one happens, I think that is actually disconcerting. I know there is a hardcore of sort of RFK Jr. fans. I suspect it isn't quite as vast as it appears to be online, but he has his adherents. And I wonder, you know, we were talking at other times about Trump himself and the appeal to people who are perceived as anti-establishment or hostile to the establishment. Kennedy certainly plays into that. But, you know, I'm curious, like, does Trump himself, in your view, really have like strong views about, for example, non-COVID vaccines or processed foods, or is he just trying to buy off the RFK Jr. voting bloc?
Well, I think he's said in the past that he is very supportive of vaccines, and of course he's bragged about being part of Operation Warp Speed in relation to the COVID vaccine. If I remember correctly, he had a family member who had a preventable illness or disease that could have been stopped by one of the vaccines. It might have been polio, don't quote me on that. So I mean, generally speaking, he's actually a pro-vaccine guy. And I think when he says, hey, there's stuff we don't agree on, but I'm bringing him into the fold because I think he's got some important perspective, the underlying sort of inference there is that he doesn't agree with him on the vaccine programs.
Yeah.
I think.
No, I think that is the inference, and I think it is interesting that, to me, I think actually what's happening here is that Trump is going around trying to get voters from various camps. So it's the sort of the anti-vax people, the RFK people. He's trying to do it on other topics as well. I mean, we're just recently seeing him making sort of appeals to Muslim voters in Michigan who just want peace. I'm sympathetic to the view that there are Muslim voters in Michigan who just want peace, but coming from Trump with his history, the Muslim ban and all of that, I think that is considered, opportunistic, let's say. And I wonder, is the Kennedy stuff just part of that similar opportunism?
I would say that it's probably more Trump's advisors that are really thrilled about a lot of RFK's health sentiments, and they've conveyed that to Trump, and Trump is willing to listen to people around him as much as the media insists that he's like a lone wolf and he doesn't ever listen to his advisors. We know that's not true based on some of the positions that he took during his first administration, especially on foreign policy. That would have been unthinkable on the campaign trail. We know that he amended an H-1B visa overhaul thanks to the input of Jared Kushner. So he is willing to listen to people around him on a litany of issues, if he trusts them and if he thinks they're giving him good advice. And on this health program in particular, what hasn't really been talked about is that this is something that resonates really significantly with a lot of suburban women who are watching Tradwife content on TikTok or are noticing that they feel sluggish under processed foods. A lot of them have autoimmune disorders or chronic illness, and they feel like RFK is one of the few people that is actually taking their concerns seriously. We also see women suffering from higher rates of depression and anxiety than ever before, while we have higher SSRI prescriptions than ever before, and that's another issue that RFK has been taking care to tackle, alongside J.D. Vance, by the way, who has this personal history with the opioid crisis. So I think those two are kind of two peas in a pod in some ways as well.
Yeah, and while I'm skeptical of Kennedy in a whole range of ways, I do think the processed foods issue, for example, is something that a lot of people have genuine concerns about. Just on the politics of it, Amber, I mean, you would have more insight than I would into the sort of conservative world generally. Do you think that Kennedy, has he brought new voters to Trump? By backing Trump, has he increased Trump's popularity in any way, do you think?
This is totally speculative, but I'll just provide an anecdote. So a friend of mine, Alex Clark, runs a podcast that used to be called Poplitics, and she actually changed it to, I think it's called Culture Apothecary. And it's because all of her episodes where she had on health experts or sort of crunchy people did exceptionally well, and her audience kept telling her, hey, I'm a liberal or I'm a conservative. I've never thought about this before. I love this. Please do more of this. So she changed the entire tenor of her podcast. It's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers, and she was invited to one of these events with RFK along with some of the guests who have been on her podcast. And these are not people who would be considered traditional conservatives. So just watching that movement kind of happen, I think there is a legitimate political realignment of the crunchy hippie left with the sort of trad right and identifying this common ground on health issues.
Yeah, no, I think there is. I think there's genuine realignments going on in all sorts of interesting ways in American politics, and those are definitely things to keep an eye on.
And we're one of the few shows that covers them, so
Exactly.
please stick around. We're going to cover more here on Rising right after this.